Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, in whichever part of the world that you are, and welcome to Learnamytes, where learning is for all and all that we do is for learning. Today, this is going to be a very interesting episode. Now, what is the episode all about? We are going to see that in a while. But before that, please like and share this episode in your network as much as you can, and please subscribe Learnamytes. Let's begin. Poem of India, which has been written thousands of years before. Of course, I named the poem is Mahabharata. In Mahabharata, we know there was one of the central characters of Mahabharata, or rather the patriarch of Mahabharata, Bhishma Pitama. He was blessed with a boon, and the boon was he had something called as Ichha Mrityu. What it means is basically he could live forever, or rather he could decide when to leave for heavenly abode. Now, it was quite contextual as far as Mahabharata is concerned, but it made me think that is it possible in today's world? Or rather, can people live for hundreds of years and live with happiness? Is there any answer to this question? Is there a method or is there a way of doing it? That is why I came across this book called IKIGAI, which has been a bestseller for a number of years. This book has been written by Hector, Garcia and Francesc Miralles, and it says on the cover itself, it is said the Japanese secret to a long and happy life. So I'm not just talking about longevity, but I'm also talking about leading a happy life. Now, where did this concept brew, or how did the authors decide to write about this? So the authors say somewhere in the book that we discovered that one place in particular called Ogimi. Now, I'm not very sure about the Japanese pronunciations, but I'll call this as Ogimi. So it could be Ogimi or it could be Yogimi, whatever it is. But the spelling is O-G-I-M-I. A place in particular, Ogimi, a rural town on the north end of the island of Japan, of course, with a population of about 3,000, boasts the highest life expectancy in the world. A fact that has earned it the nickname, the village of longevity. Okinawa is where most of Japan's shikuwasa, the word is shikuwasa, a lime-like fruit that packs an extraordinary antioxidant punch, comes from. Could that be Ogimi's secret to long life? Because Ogimi, this little town of Ogimi, is located in the Okinawa region, or the Okinawa region, or whatever you want to call it as in terms of pronunciation. Or is it the purity of the water used to brew its morning tea? Or is it something else? This is where I felt in today's video, let's review, like I said earlier, let's review this wonderful book called Ikigai. First of all, Ikigai, the term, it's a Japanese term. Now what it means is the purpose of life, or how do you define the purpose of life? Or in simple words, what makes you jump out of your bed every morning to lead a wonderful happy life? Now, if you're wondering what is this entire thing all about, so in fact that is the crux of Ikigai. But before I come to this part, which is very, very interesting, let me just tell you quickly what all is there in the book. And I would like you to read the book, so I'm just going to give you some glimpses. So there's one chapter in the book which is dedicated to the yogic science or the yoga, which is, I think, very proud that it is India's gift to the world as all of us know. In fact, they've also talked about the importance of sun salutations, so what we popularly know as Surya Namaskar, for leading a healthy and a wonderful life. So they've talked about that. They've also talked about this concept of radio taiso. So see the word radio taiso. So they have explained the concept. Radio taiso are like quick exercises. They're fun exercises. It's a fun way of getting into a routine. So I would like you to I've also done this exercise. I've done some of these exercises, and let me tell you, they're wonderful. They're quick. There is, I can see the effect. The effect is also wonderful. or you can see a number of videos which are available on the YouTube, and you can start doing it. Then they have also talked about Tai Chi kind of exercises, and they have also spoken about Surya Namaskar and the importance of Surya Namaskar, or what they call as the sun salutations. They speak about the importance of pranayama, the importance of yoga, the importance of food, and yes, somewhere I could relate this with the line of Sri Sri Ravi Shankar ji from The Art of Living, where Sri Sri always says that what you eat is what you are. So just to relate it back to Ikigai, so they have explained it in the book that people in this Okinawa region, they eat only optimal amount of food. They eat food without, they consume food without any sugar. They drink a lot of jasmine tea and a lot of green tea, and of course they consume very little salt. Now, does this have a bearing on the fact that they live a longer life, or the longevity is it's almost 100 in that region? Well, I would leave that for you to find out. Diet is something which is very person specific, so again I would say that it is always better that one should consult one's physician, one's doctor, and then decide what to cut down upon, and I think that's the best thing that I can think of. But I just thought I'll just introduce some of the concepts which are there in the book. Then there is another very interesting concept which I would like you to read. It's called Wabi Sabi. So there's a philosophy called Wabi Sabi. Because this book is, I think, it's based on this whole region in Japan. The word itself, Ikigai, is a Japanese word, like I said earlier. So there is an influence of Buddhism. I mean, there are some of the principles which have been explained in Buddhism which are also there in the book. Like for example, they say that count each step. When you're walking, count each step. Understand how the breath is flowing. So that is something related to, I think it's related more to meditation and pranayama and all those other sciences. But then they have explained that in the book. They have just not explained it in detail, but yes, they have given references of all those things, because they believe that all these little things contribute to Ikigai. Now, what exactly is Ikigai? Let's come to this wonderful board which I have here with me. And on this board you can see that there are 4 clusters. Let me use this to explain what each cluster is, so that the idea of Ikigai becomes very crystal clear. Let's call this purple cluster. Let's call this purple cluster as what you love. This is one of the elements of Ikigai, what you love. The second element, the one in red, let's call this a red cluster. You can see it on the screen. This red cluster, let's call it as what you are good at. Fair enough. Let's call this orange cluster, all these 4 little pieces. Okay, let's call this as what you get paid for, or what you can be paid for, whichever ways you look at it. And let's call this, finally, let's call this yellow cluster as what the world needs. Let me show you something from the book which explains this entire chart. It's in the form of this chart which is there. If we can zoom the camera a little bit, I think that will help on the figure. Yeah. Thank you. So let's understand what does it mean. So they say that as one of the principles of Ikigai, if there are these 4 areas, these 4 clusters like I explained, what if these clusters, they intersect? What happens? So, while living your life, if there is an intersection between what you love and what you are good at, you can see. Let's for instance, let's assume that this pond, this small little white pond, as you can see it on the screen, this little pond, it kind of represents the intersection. So there is an intersection between what you love and what you are good at. That is called as passion. If I move a little further, and if there is an intersection between what you are good at and what you get paid for, that's called as your profession. You can see the intersection there. I placed it at this junction. Moving further, if we move to the third level, the third stage of that diagram, where they say that if there is an intersection between what you get paid for, this is where you get paid for whatever that you are doing, and what the world needs. That means whatever the world needs, you are providing that kind of service or product or whatever it is. If that happens, that intersection or this part, this intersecting part which has been represented by this little ball, it represents your vocation. And finally, when there is an intersection between what the world needs and remember what you love, there is an intersection. This intersection represents what we call as mission. Now if there is an intersection in all these four stages, as you can see, then finally when you live this kind of a life, that's called as IKIGAI. Remember, the skin represents IKIGAI. So this is one way of looking at it. So they say that people who live in that region, if you want to be, you should be doing something which you love, then you should be good at what you love. Easy to understand. The second thing, obviously, you should get paid for what you are doing. And then finally, very, very interesting, whatever that you get paid for, finally, there should be some demand for it in the world. They say that if any of these pieces are missing, okay, then that's not IKIGAI. Okay, for the moment, I just picked up all these intersections, and there's a reason behind that, because I'm going to move on to the next very interesting concept of IKIGAI. So this is the basic premise of IKIGAI. That your life should be in harmony with what you love, what you're good at, you should get paid for it, and then finally that whatever that you're doing, whatever that you love, there should be some demand for it in the world. Let me move on to the next element, which is equally very, very interesting, and that explains IKIGAI in a different way. So we talked about the intersections, like there's passion, there's profession, and then there's of course vocation, and then there is finally mission. Now what I say, that there should be all these four areas or all these four elements should be in congruence, they should be in harmony, or they should be in unison. What happens if one of them is missing? Let's say, let's consider a scenario where you do something which you love, which is represented by this white piece. You do something which you are good at. You do something which you get paid for. But there's a change here. What is missing? What is missing? Let's represent this with the black piece. But it is not the need of the world. Now they say that the people in Okinawa, they believe that if this happens, it means you will have a feeling of satisfaction, because whatever that you are doing, great. Yeah, you are loving it, and you are very good at it, and of course you get paid for. Maybe you get paid for a lot of money, but the problem is the world does not need this kind of a service. What happens in this case? Definitely, I think it's common sense. There is satisfaction, but definitely there is some sort of emptiness. In this case, this represents emptiness, because you are thinking, or rather uselessness, if I may be a little blunt. Why? Because you feel that I'm putting in all my efforts, but at the end of the day, it's not of any use to the world. Can it continue in the longer term? Well, no one knows. So this is the first scenario. Let's again change the scenario and let's look at a different way. Let's say you're doing something which you like. You're doing something for which you get paid as well, fair enough. You're doing something which the world also needs, but the problem is you do not love this. You do not love your job. A typical scenario, what we call in today's complex world as the midlife crisis. I don't want to name a specific sector, but let me tell you that being a trainer, being a coach, there are quite a few people from my my network, who have told me that we work because we get a very good paycheck, we are very good at our job because we have mastered those qualifications and things like that. Yes, whatever that we are doing is the in thing, so the most advanced technology or stuff like that, whatever that they are doing, that's the most in thing, it's a service which is required. But you know what, we don't love our job. This scenario, as per IKIGAI, is a very tricky scenario where there is a feeling of maybe delight as well, there's a feeling of satisfaction as well, but yes, there is a feeling of emptiness. That emptiness is because I am not being able to give justice to my talent or what my inner calling is. And IKIGAI is all about your inner calling, as they have said in the book. Let's take the third scenario. Let's say I've just changed. The moment you changed an element, a piece, suddenly the context changes completely. What happens in this case, you can see here, very interesting. You are in a job, a profession, or you are doing, this could also be, it's not just related to job or profession, it is related to all walks of life. Just to make it a little easy, I'm giving this example of, job or service or things like that, just to make it easy, that's about it. So let's take this very interesting scenario, the third scenario, where you're doing something which you love. You're doing something which is required by the world. You're doing something which you get paid for, but the problem is you're not good at it. I'll repeat this. This is a very interesting scenario. You're doing something which you love, fair enough. You're doing something which is required by the world, is what the world needs as per IKIGAI. You also get paid for it, fair enough, reasonable, but you do not have the right amount of skills, or the right amount of talent which is required. That means you're not good at it that much. What does happen in this scenario? This scenario can be delightful in a way because you love what you do and you also get paid for it, fair enough. But the problem with this scenario is that you become a little uncertain. You become a little insecure at a certain stage. You're always under the threat that there is someone who is better than you. These feelings could be internal. There could be no competition. You might be in a very niche field and there could be no competition, fair enough. But they believe, as per the science of IKIGAI, they believe as per the practice of IKIGAI, that if this piece is missing, what it means is it can make your life a little uncertain, because like I said, there will always be that insecurity. Then am I missing out on something, or what we call as FOMO, fear of missing out. That scenario creeps in. Let's take the fourth scenario. Sorry. Let's take the fourth scenario. Okay? Very simple. Now all I have to do is just place this piece here and see what happens. Now here is one very interesting scenario. You love what you do. You're good at it. You've got the right talent. The world also needs your service. But the problem is you don't get paid for it. What happens in this scenario? You live a life of poverty. I've done theatre in my early days. When I was in college, I think I mentioned it in one of the episodes on Learnamytes. And I know some names. There are a few names. I can't take them on video right now, but I know some people out here from this industry who are absolutely passionate. They were absolutely brilliant. They were entertaining. People were mad, and they had this ability to connect with people, to entertain people like nobody's business. But the problem was they never got paid during good old days, or they were not bothered too much about their finances. They died their life of poverty. Don't have any wealth left with them. And that is possibly the reason why most of the people, they realize this somewhere in their life, and what they do suddenly, is they say that okay, it's fine, I won't do what I love, I will do that will pay me. This thing can come at a later stage. Yeah, I'll show you what happens normally in that. And these are very, very practical scenarios. And this is exactly what Ikigai is all about. And they say that finally, for people in Okinawa, or Okimi, specifically the town of Okimi, when all these four elements, they are centered, they are grounded, they are met, that is how once again, remember the king, they live the life of Ikigai, or what the authors say, what Garcia and Miralles say in the book, is that they Ikigai, they start Ikigai. One interesting thing, after, I think it's on page 106 or 107, I would like most of our viewers to read Ikigai, and let's discuss more on this concept in the comment box and otherwise. So, there in this book, they have actually interviewed the people from Japan, from this specific region. So, they have interviewed these, what we call as Ceneterians. So, they are people who are where the age is about 101, 106, 107, so on and so forth. They've interviewed those people and they have actually discussed all these concepts practically. So it's a must read, I would say. It's a brilliant book. It is also available in multiple apps. So it's, in case you prefer listening instead of reading, you can also do that. Maybe apps like Audible or Read, or there are a couple of other apps as well. So you can listen to Ikigai as well. At the end of this, before I conclude, let us look at what are the possible learnings. Now, what were my possible learnings? I think one thing is every page of this book, you start, I mean, ideally you should start from the first page, but let's say you pick up any page of the book and start reading. One thing which is a message which has been driven out of this book is optimism. So yes, they have talked about being optimistic at every stage. The people who follow Ikigai, they are optimistic, they are full of life, they are full of energy, they are positive. Number two, it talks about not worrying. They say that you should not worry. So there was this, there's this nice book by Dale Carnegie, wonderful book. Maybe one of the episodes later in our Learnamytes video, we will also review this book called Stop Worrying and Start Living by the iconic author late Dale Carnegie. Brilliant book. And I also remember reading this story of Gautam Buddha, where Buddha said the biggest problem with mankind today is that we worry a lot. I remember this line by Seneca. Okay, let me just read out this line for you. This is a famous line by Seneca. Yeah, the line says, "We suffer more in imagination than in reality." I'll repeat the line. We suffer more in imagination than in reality. And that's precisely the reason why we need to stop worrying. And that's exactly what Buddha said. Then of course, like I said, this book, Ikigai, has got an influence of the Buddhist culture as well. So, as per Buddhism, as they say, that they believe that live an unhurried life. One of the messages that Gautam Buddha gave to his disciples was that most of his disciples said, because the Buddhists had to travel a lot, and we are talking about those days, thousands of years before, where there were no transportation facilities. Obviously, there were no flights, there were no cruises. So, the Buddhist monks, they literally had to walk down from places. So they used to say that we do not get time to meditate because we are always on the go. That is why Buddha said that no problem. While you walk, that's your meditation. And how do you go about it? Like I said earlier in the video as well, that please count your steps. Please go one step at a time, one by one, one by one, one by one. Live an unhurried life. The fourth learning which I can think of is cultivating good habits. Ikigai is all about cultivating these habits. One is understanding and acclimatizing this concept, and the other is cultivating good habits. I would also recommend you to watch our video which we had released earlier. In fact, two videos. One was on cultivating good habits and one was on the 5 AM club. We'll provide the links in the description box and you can definitely watch those videos. So cultivating good habits or nurturing good habits is what I felt. And lastly, the IKIGAIans, let's call them as the IKIGAIans, or these Ceneterians, those who have been interviewed in the book, and towards the end of the book, they say that you should have friends. You should make friends. What I could find from this was a simple message, a simple and a beautiful message is build long-term relationships or build and nurture relationships. So I think these are the learnings from the book. Towards the end of the book, they have also given 10 principles of Ikigai. I'm not going to read out those principles for you because like I said, I want you to want you to read the book. So that's it from my end. Wish you all the best on your Ikigai journey. I think we can travel this journey together as well. Please post in the comment box and let's see if we can do something. We can form a group of all like-minded people who would like to follow these principles as a part of the Learnamytes community. And let's Ikigai. So thank you so much. See you next week with yet another video. Please like, share and subscribe this video as much as you can. And please subscribe Learnamytes. Thank you so much.